What's going on, everybody? Kalipus Tech here, coming back at you with another video. In this video, we're going to be taking another look at the Motorola Moto G Stylus 5G 2022 about a year after my original review, and going over whether or not it's still a good phone to buy at this point. Now, as always, if you do end up wanting to learn more about this phone, be sure to check out the description, where I am linking to several other videos about it, as well as some information about pricing, availability, and some of my favorite smartphone accessories. But with that being said, let's get into it. So with the Moto G Stylus 5G 2022, we're getting a really large 6.8-inch 120Hz IPS LCD display with a 1080p resolution, a PPI of 395, and a 20.5:9 aspect ratio. So in pretty much every way, we are getting a really good display here. At 6.8 inches, it is of course a really large display. So if you're doing stuff like reading or really any kind of content consumption, this will be a good thing. And not only are we getting a really large display, but the image quality is really good too. With the 1080p resolution, things are going to be nice and sharp and clear. So if you're doing something like watching a video, for example, where the image quality is a bit more important, you will get a good experience with the 120Hz refresh rate compared to the average 60Hz display. The movement on the screen is going to be a bit faster and smoother, making the phone feel more premium to use. And despite only being an IPS LCD and not like an OLED or an AMOLED or something, the display is pretty bright, the colors look really nice, and even though it doesn't have the most amazing viewing angles, so it might be a little bit more difficult to see it outside in the sun, for example, for what it is, it's still at least okay. So in general, if you're looking for an affordable 5G phone that has a really nice display, then this phone will be a great choice. Now for storage, with the Moto G Stylus 5G 2022, we're getting 256GB of internal storage with microSD card expansion, but keep in mind this phone in my hand is factory unlocked, and if you end up getting it through a carrier, the storage could be different. But for the purpose of this video, I am using the factory unlocked version, and I will say for a mid-range phone, even at this point in 2023, this is definitely a lot of storage. With 256GB, for the average user, you're most likely never going to run out of space, and especially with microSD card expansion, even if you have a bunch of photos and videos and music and stuff like that, you can always get a really large microSD card. In fact, I think this one actually came with one for that matter, and that definitely will make a difference. Now for security features, with the Moto G Stylus 5G 2022, this phone does have face unlock and a fingerprint scanner right here on the power key, so definitely a great spot for a fingerprint scanner, but let's give it a try. There we go, one more time. And there we go, no issues at all. And again, remember this phone does have face unlock too, so definitely nice to get both options. For the camera setup, up front, we get a nice looking hole punch design for the selfie camera. This camera is 16 megapixels. Then on the back, we get a triple camera setup with a 50 megapixel main camera, an 8 megapixel ultra wide camera, and a 2 megapixel depth sensing camera. So in general, definitely a great camera setup here. We got pretty much all the features, including an ultra wide camera and a macro camera. Actually, I just realized I forgot to mention the ultra wide camera on this phone, in addition to being an ultra wide camera, does also double as a macro camera. So definitely keep this in mind. But overall, if you are looking for a mid-range phone that has pretty much all the camera features you typically find in a mid-range phone, then you won't go wrong with this phone. Also keep in mind for video, with the Moto G Stylus 5G 2022, this phone does have a max recording quality of 1080p in both the rear and front cameras, so unfortunately no 4K here. And the reason I really bring this up is because with the Moto G Stylus 5G 2023, that phone actually can record 4K videos in the rear camera, so definitely a nice improvement there. But again, with this phone, it does max out at 1080p. Now to give you an idea of what this camera can do, here's some pictures taken with the Moto G Stylus 5G 2022. So in general, definitely great photo quality here. As always with pretty much any mid-range phone, I would definitely not compare this to a much higher end device like a Samsung Galaxy S21 FE or a Google Pixel 7a for example, because those phones are going to have much better photo quality. But for what it is, especially being over a year old now, I do think the photo quality here is pretty impressive. So if you are in the market for a more affordable phone and you want to make sure you have good photo quality in general, I do think that for what it is, the Moto G Stylus 5G will be a pretty good choice. Now for the RAM and processor, with the Moto G Stylus 5G 2022, we're getting 8GB of RAM with the Qualcomm Snapdragon 695 5G processor. So not a bad processor. In fact, in general, when it comes to overall performance, for what it is, this is a decently fast phone. So for more basic activities like web browsing, social media, streaming content like videos and music, and maybe some light mobile gaming, it will get the job done effortlessly. I mean, for that kind of stuff, you don't even need a phone this fast. But if you are going to be on your phone a bit more doing that kind of stuff, you will get a really good experience. But if you're maybe more of a power user and you're doing more demanding activities like higher performance mobile gaming for example, or maybe video editing or something like that, then you might want to get something a bit faster. And if you really want a super fast mid-range phone, keep in mind at this point in 2023, you will find a lot of mid-range phones that are quite a bit faster than this. In fact, even this phone's successor, the Moto G Stylus 5G 2023, that phone is noticeably faster. So is something like the Samsung Galaxy A34 or A54 5G. so in general, on one hand, it's definitely not the fastest anymore, but on the other hand, for the average user, I do think it will be plenty fast enough. Now I ran a benchmark test on this phone using Geekbench 6, and here are the results I got. So what I recommend doing is running this test on your current phone, and then comparing your results to these, and that's going to give you a better idea of where this phone stands performance-wise compared to your current device. Because of course, depending on what you're coming from, it may or may not actually be an upgrade. But again, I feel like for most people, while not being the fastest mid-range phone out there, it should at least get the job done. Now for the battery, the Moto G Stylus 5G 2022 has a 5000 mAh battery that supports 15-watt fast charging, so definitely a great battery here. With a 5000 mAh battery, you can expect to get real good battery life and longevity, so if that's important to you, you're not going to go wrong with this phone. And when it comes to charging speed, although 15 watts is really not the best, it will get the job done, so in general, I really have no complaints here. Now for the software, this phone does currently have Android 12, and it's kind of weird because I did expect it to get Android 13 at this point, so I don't really know what's going on. In fact, it's pretty possible that it's only this device in my hand specifically, but just keep in mind if you really do want Android 13, you might want to get the 2023 instead, because even though I feel like eventually at some point this phone should have Android 13, I have no idea when or if that's actually going to happen. And at this point in 2023, basically every new phone has Android 13 already, so if the software in general is really important to you, getting an older phone is probably not the best move. When it comes to other features, the Moto G Stylus 5G 2022 does have NFC, making it one of the only Moto G phones with this feature for some reason. So if you do like to use tap and pay, you won't have to worry about that here. And of course, as the name implies, it does also have a stylus. Now in general, for what it is, the stylus here is definitely at least decent. Sure, it's not going to be good enough for like actual art or anything, but if you're looking for a phone that has a stylus that's not the Samsung Galaxy S23 Ultra, then I feel like overall, some kind of Moto G phone is pretty much your best option. Because depending on your carrier, while there are phones like the TCL Stylus 5G for example, I feel like it just doesn't work nearly as well as this stylus. So if you're looking for something for more basic handwritten notes, navigating through your display, and maybe playing a game or two, you're definitely not going to go wrong with this phone. But in conclusion, my general thoughts about the Motorola Moto G Stylus 5G 2022 about a year after my original review. Overall, while I do feel like its successor is a bit of an upgrade in a few ways, I do think for what it is, even a year later, the Moto G Stylus 5G 2022 still has a lot to offer, especially considering you can get this phone for so much cheaper than its original price. I mean, I paid about $500 for it, and now I typically see people getting it for under $200. And even though the Moto G Stylus 5G 2023 is pretty affordable, it's definitely not that affordable yet. So in general, if you're looking for a mid-range phone that has a stylus, a really nice display, plenty of storage, a really good camera setup, a super large battery, features like NFC, and decently good performance too, then the Moto G Stylus 5G 2022 will be a great choice. Now once again, if you do end up wanting to learn more about this phone, definitely check out the description, where I am linking to several other videos about it, as well as some information about pricing, availability, and some of my favorite smartphone accessories. But that's it for this video. If you enjoyed it and found it useful, be sure to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to follow Kalibas Tech on Twitter and Instagram. And as always, I will see you in the next video.